Alrighty, everybody. Once again, thanks for hopping on the webinar today. We do have a half-hour session. We do have a hard stop at the half hour, so we'll try to get through this relatively quickly, but of course, still while giving you guys all the information you would need. So let's just get going here. All right, Kyle, I think I'll leave this to you for the time being, and I'll just cycle through the slides. Let me know if you need anything.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate it. So as we mentioned, we got about 30 minutes, so a lot of information to cover, but why are we talking about healthcare in the first place? Well, if you've been watching any of the news, simply it seems like the healthcare system is essentially under attack these days. Kind of researching some of the topics and data points for this presentation were kind of staggering. The first 8 months in 2023 saw over 71 million medical records released through various forms of data breaches. So that's kind of why we wanted to cover this. It seems to be a hot topic for everyone currently. This is the main agenda, so we'll kind of fly through this a little bit, talk about the sensitive data that is being held, how this information is being leaked, and kind of what we can do in terms of not only a DLP solution, but the regulatory compliances that kind of come along with that as well. And happy to answer any questions as they may arise. Just pop them in the chat and we'll try to get to all of them. Otherwise, next slide, John. So working with sensitive data, obviously PHI or protected health information is probably some of the most valuable data out there for many reasons. It has a very long shelf life in terms of like dark web and reselling of the information. Has a very high selling price. And that's basically based off of, if you get your hands on a medical record, it has essentially all the information you would need for an individual. Kind of just looking through some numbers while I was researching this. The average social security number on the dark web gets about 53 cents. The average credit card gets about $5.40. But the average medical record in full text gets about $250. So there is quite of an incentive for individuals to try to get this data. And as you can see, about 39% of all data breaches come from insiders, is what we kind of specialize in. If you want to go to the next slide. So human error is a large part of some of these data breaches. 80% of all data breaches caused are by mistake. This can be simply from things like misdirected emails, weak passwords, as well as just not proper cybersecurity training for these individuals. And as mentioned, a large portion does come from a human error. If you want to go to the next slide, John. But there also is the insider risk, and that kind of goes back to some of the incentives that I kind of mentioned. $250 per medical record, pretty good financial gain for an individual. And we're seeing about 20% of all data breaches do occur from malicious intent from insider risks. If you want to go to the next slide. As mentioned, 2023 was the biggest year on record for healthcare data breaches. As mentioned, in the first 8 months alone, there was over 71 million. 9 million of the data breaches last year were affected by unauthorized access. And just some of those examples in the Q4 of 2023 would be like Kent County Medical Authority, where almost 60,000 individuals were leaked. Then we did also have one in Oregon where 20,000 individual records were leaked as well. So that's a little background on the information regarding PHI and things like that. I'll throw it over to John. He can kind of go into some of the regulatory compliances protecting some of this data today.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. I'll get my camera and mic back on. All right, looks like we're in business. All right, so yeah, thank you, Kyle, for going over that. And naturally, as he mentioned, now we'll be going over some information regarding the regulatory compliance when it does come to the healthcare industry. So I'll cycle over to this now. And actually, I need to move, go to webinar, is getting in the way. Yeah, there we are. All right, so first and foremost, I think when anybody thinks of any regulatory compliance when it comes to healthcare, HIPAA is probably the first thing that people think of. And who is affected by HIPAA? Generally speaking, in a very broad sense, it's anybody dealing with any sort of, well, healthcare related information. It can be healthcare providers. That's probably one of the first and foremost that comes to mind. And it is applicable to all healthcare providers, regardless of their size. It can be Blue Cross Blue Shield, or it could be your very small local healthcare provider. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Everybody, regardless of the size, needs to be compliant with HIPAA. Of course, the health plans as well. Again, this would be your standard health plan, dental, vision, what have you. Anybody that is issuing any prescription drugs, naturally, of course, applies to HMO as well, Medicare, Medicaid, so on and so forth. And also healthcare clearinghouses. This might be something not so obvious for a lot of folks, but in the US, unfortunately, there are a lot of middlemen involved in the healthcare industry. So there's a lot of information getting transacted through various entities. So also, again, we've got a complex system. There's probably going to be 3, 4, 5 different parties involved in any sort of insurance related information or things along those lines. If you're going to the hospital, the doctor's office, dental office, what have you. So there are a lot of parties involved that you might not think about, and business associates of these different medical facilities as well, of course. So quick one regarding who is affected. Getting into what that means for these healthcare providers and of course others as well. Following the HIPAA rules, of course, if you do not follow them, there are penalties. Now, as we can see on the bottom here, the penalties for non-compliance varies greatly. You can see anywhere from the minimum penalty of $120 up to $1.8 million. I would presume that it could also be higher as well, depending on the count of the patient records or what have you that are getting out into the world. But regardless, we can see that there is some sort of maybe a soft cap at $1.8 million, but of course, I'm assuming could be higher as well. But we can see that naturally, if you're breaking any sort of privacy, also any sort of confidential security as well, breach of notification, omnibus rule, as well as enforcement rule involved here with HIPAA. So naturally, at the end of the day, of course, if somebody does see the penalties for non-compliance as $120, that might not sound so bad, but again, it can vary up to that quite large number, and I'm sure beyond. Also, at the end of the day, nobody wants any sort of bad reputation coming towards their business because there was a data leak. Unfortunately, that has been happening more often than not recently. Now, another very important regulation when it comes to more of a framework than a regulation, to be frank, but it is high trust. And again, who is affected by high trust? That's going to be any businesses managing sensitive data, which would be PHI related information. That is anything going with healthcare related information, financial, educational, and so on and so forth. I know high trust is a very large, let's say, framework that is used within the US, rather a certification as well. But of course, it is used globally also. So this doesn't necessarily strictly apply to either the US or Canada, but it can also apply in other parts of the world as well. And we can see here last, high trust is voluntary, but the certification has been quite the standard for a while now, and particularly in healthcare. And high trust is going to be rolling out something in the near future. Don't know if it's going to be this year or next year. It seems like they are still pondering on kind of what they want to do, but there will be something in relation to DLP coming soon. And again, as we can see, one framework to rule them all. Now, yeah, there are multiple regulatory requirements in this single framework, which does actually work quite nicely. You don't have to have or be dealing with, 5 or 6 different frameworks when it is somewhat bundled into one. We can see structured into 19 controlled domains, each addressing key aspects of information security. And naturally, it is quite scalable. I've been speaking with a few companies in the past who are in the ballpark of, let's say, 20, 30, 40 employees that either want to be certified with high trust or are certified, and at the same time also been speaking with organizations into the multiple thousands of employees, which they have been certified by high trust for a while and will continue to do so. Yeah, and going on to the certification process. So naturally, there is an audit that happens to be certified when it comes to high trust. We can see that there's something related to it's something what essentials have been there, what has been implemented, and then also some risk-based scoring. We can see these are conducted by authorized high trust firms. Now, be similar to, let's say, ISO certifications or something along these lines. You do have an authorized entity to then conduct that audit. Now, the requirements for this, you do need to score well. Now, what is well is, well, that needs to be kind of looked in further, let's say, from the side of high trust. But there are 19 high trust domains, and these control requirements are, well, they vary naturally. But of course, you do have to score well on these, and a lot of these are in relation to data security. And again, as I mentioned, with high trust, they are going to be implementing some sort of a requirement for data loss prevention in the near future to ensure that, again, the organizations that they are certifying are indeed secure, they are indeed compliant, and they are working with their client data accordingly. Now, let's go on here to talk about how Safetica can help with compliance. So again, I'll just be kind of going through here. So how can Safetica DLP help? So first and foremost, whenever we're coming across any sort of environment, we need to gain visibility of the data in that environment. And actually, speaking of this, I'll actually switch over into my other environment, which does have the product, and I'll kind of walk you through quickly how that generally looks from our side. Now, hopefully you all can see my screen here as well. And what we're looking at right now is our new Safetica solution. This is still in early access, but we will be releasing this product in April, mid-April to be somewhat precise. And also what we have here, we can see it is a web-based console. Historically, our old solution was a standard on-prem product, but this is a also web browser, let's say, solution. You don't have to have that console that you log into on the server side, but also it is possible to have this solution hosted as well, so you don't need that infrastructure on your side, which is very helpful, of course, for most, if especially maybe you're a cloud first company or something along those lines, or you just don't want to deal with the management of having some on-prem servers and stuff like this if you're maybe fading away from that and going more towards the cloud. But as we can see, again, our main page here, this is regarding data. So this part of the solution is where we have a visibility on any and all actions happening in the event. Now, this is a demo environment. This is my particular demo environment. Doesn't have a whole lot of pre-populated data in it. There is some stuff in here for me messing around the last few days, just trying to get some stuff set up either for this or for other different calls. But we can see if we're scrolling through these files here, we can see there's a bunch of stuff going on: renaming, creating, copying, deleting, uploading, and so on and so forth. And as we go through here, we can see actually, so yeah, again, this was me messing around with my data categories to make sure I got things right and then breaking it and well, getting it right again. But we can see I was moving around this file, and this file actually does have some HIPAA related information inside of it. And we can see the destination that it came from, the user that was involved, myself, the action which was taken, which was to notify the user, hey, this is some sensitive info. I was just copying it from one place to another. And for example, if I do open this up, we can have a look. So these are the actions that have been taken in the past few days. And we can also have a look at the classification as to why it was classified. Within the HIPAA category, and again, I'll touch on that in a sec, we have the keyword that we're looking for is patient, and that does show up in here once, for example. And also I did create some regular expression to look for patient regardless of how it's spelled, if it's uppercase, lowercase, or if it's some sort of mixture in between. We did get a hit on both of those. and that is why the file was classified as such. Now, to touch on the classification quickly, because that is one of the most important parts, especially starting with, what is your data? Where is your data? Who has access to your data? This is where we would go about with data classifications and create something in order to classify said data. First, when we do deploy Safetica onto machines, we have it run kind of silently in the background, just auditing the environment as a whole, seeing how people work with the data, not interfering in one way or another. Also, generally speaking, not setting any data classifications off at the beginning, just letting it run for a few weeks to see what data it's picking up on. And from that point going forward, then we start to build out data classifications, and then after that, policies to then do something once it finds those classifications. So we can see here, for example, I created this HIPAA data classification or data category. And what I had done here, I put in for example, a US Medicare identifier, and that's a regular expression. Also for keyword search for this as well, social security numbers, and I just threw in patient just for good measure. And it's pretty much as simple as that to create any sort of rules. But if you do want to be more specific potentially, you can see, open this up here. We do have predefined algorithms. This is going to be built out further once we do get closer to our launch date or the official launch date for the product. No point in showing right now because we just don't have what we want in there yet. But we do have also, for example, keyword and regular expressions, which we saw before. Application category. So this is either the category of the application, like is it a web browser or maybe some CAD design software or what have you, right? You can categorize applications as you wish, or you can also choose specific applications. And again, just to make things more precise. Also, depending on where the files are stored, we can classify them that way. Generally speaking, in an environment that has good data hygiene, this would be nice and easy to do, but that's not always the case. But anyways, we have also a website. So if you're using some specific domain to do a lot of your work, or if a lot of your client data is in some specific website or your internal interweb or what have you, then if anything's getting exported from that website or downloaded from that website, we can classify the files that way. Or just purely if it's a specific kind of file, TXT or what have you, again, get the idea, and existing classification. But one really cool thing that we can do here if we want, we can bundle these all together. So we could do something if it matches these keywords, if it matches these regular expressions, if it comes from this application, and if it is stored in this path. We could do all of them if we want, and that does make it very, very, very granular, or at the same time, you can be more broad if you wish. So it's also a very nice feature of the solution. And one thing I'll just touch on quickly, because I don't want to spend too much time in here, but is just what happens, for example, if we're trying to send some info. We can see I've got WeTransfer here. This is just a simple website to share information. And I've got this information here for some of my demo data. I've got this here. I'll open it up quickly. It's not going to probably look the greatest because I don't think there's a Windows license on this machine, or not Windows, but Office. Let's see. And yeah, so for example, we can see, yeah, oh, there we go. Well, regardless, you get the idea, right? It's a form, some sort of thing you would fill out for your patient, so on and so forth. If I drag this over into to copy it, we can see so far so good. If I do click the link, so because I have this set as a notify, so this is essentially what it would come up if you have it set for notification. It'll come up and say, hey, this is sensitive. Do you want to continue? You can say, yes, I do, or you cancel saying, sorry, I didn't mean to do this. If you want more information as to why this is risky, then you can have a look. You have a look at the data category, for example, and then you have some information here. I'll cancel that. I don't want to go forward. So naturally, that's one way of going about things. And just to double check, I want to show the block, just the outright block, how that looks. And that would be, okay, so my customer data. So let's grab that one from here. I believe that should be this. And we can do, again, get a link. And I can't see it now because of GoToWebinar's in the way. And we see file upload was blocked. You get very similar information as to what it was when I clicked in there, but you get the idea. So yeah, anyways, that's how Safetica looks and kind of works in practice, at least for the notifications as well as for the blocking. We do also have block with override, which is a bit different than the notification, or just silently log in the background. But regardless, many different ways you can go about almost everything in here. There's a lot more to show than what I just showed you, but again, I just wanted to give you a really high level introduction into our new version of Safetica. So going back to the PowerPoint, there we are. So naturally, first and foremost, we need to gain visibility into the environments. Of course, we also do need to then prevent insider threats or insider risks. This is also something that we can do in the solution. There will be risk scoring for specific users to say who is more risky than others. Naturally, Safetica can also help to avoid the data breaches and the costs associated with those to help achieve regulatory compliance, auditing for employee misconduct, proactively safeguarding your data, and last but not least, to automate company policies, particularly security policies, of course, to make sure, again, that your data is safe. And it also doesn't apply just to healthcare. This can apply to many other different types of certifications as well. It could go to ISO certifications or SOC certifications or what have you, as well as just, again, being or having good data hygiene. So anyways, we will continue from here. And just a quick tidbit about Safetica, and then we'll be getting to some questions shortly. We are a global software company, and naturally we're doing DLP and insider risk management. We've been in the business for about 12, 13 years now. We're covering over 1 million devices over the globe, operating in 120 countries, and we have over 90 security evangelists. And we can see we've been recognized by Forrester, Gartner, SourceForge is fantastic for us, Capterra as well as G2. G2 is very interesting. I would have a look at some G2 information because actually they have a lot more DLP related information, it seems, than others, which is great. Also Radicati Group and Slashdot. All right, yeah, this is and what we do. Firstly, classifying the data, creating the policies, and then securing the data. It's as simple as that. All right, and some final best practices. Firstly, again, as I had mentioned, analyze the sensitive data that is residing within your organization. Then conducting some sort of a risk assessment to see, okay, we have this data now, what could possibly happen? We need to potentially think of all the ways that this data could be leaving our environment. And then of course, categorize all the data, put some policies in place to then secure said data. And then last but not least, setting up some sort of automated reporting to get those, get that data on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, what have you basis. And of course, getting real-time alerts from the solution as well when somebody's doing something they should not. All right, and it looks like we are on to question time. And let's have a look here and see what we got. All right, Kyle, I'm not sure if I'm looking in the right place. I always have a problem looking at the questions, but do you have anything that
Well, yeah, just to kind of piggyback off some of the compliance things you were talking about, I popped in the chat some information regarding the Health and Human Services. There was a presidential executive order signed last year. The HHS is going to be getting more involved in some regulatory practices. And they kind of labeled, the link I provided kind of lays out the top 10 best practices for cybersecurity, pretty useful information. They also kind of talk about the top 5 threats that they're seeing, with like social engineering being number 1, ransomware kind of being number 2, but 3 and 4 is going to be data loss type issues, either insider or like equipment theft and things like that. So may want to take a look at that. Do you see a couple questions if you want me to shoot those your way, John?
Yeah, perfect.
Individual has a question regarding our council. Is that hosted locally, or do we offer cloud services?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I touched on that briefly, but regardless. So yeah, the product going forward, we're going to have it offered either, we are going to host it on our end in AWS, or not, sorry, AWS, sorry, in Azure, they both start with A. So we'll have that in our secure Azure environment, or if the client would want, they could have it also deployed on-prem. The console is going to be the same though. You're either going to be logging on that web console. It's just either the backend is going to be talking to your own server on your premises, or also it can be a virtual server in the cloud or something like this, or it'll be hosted from our side.
Perfect. Another one is in terms of like policies. So do policies have to be set for their individual environment and customized, or is there preset configured policies that they can implement?
Right. Historically, we did not have that. We started to introduce that with our SaaS offering, Safetica Next, which we've had for about a year and a half or so. And going forward, we're going to be doing the same thing with this new version of Safetica. We will have some predefined data categories as well as some predefined policies as well. Kind of the most common things, again, GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, things along those lines, just to make everybody's lives a bit easier.
Perfect. I think I got one more here for you before we run up against the clock.
Yeah, it looks like.
Individual mentions having used DLP solutions in the past, and they're usually quite cumbersome and resource extensive. How does Safetica potentially solve that, or how are we different?
Yeah, I gotcha. So when it comes to, I guess, is how we operate or how the solution operates. So we can set some specific areas in your company environment that we would deem as safe. For example, if you have a company intranet or something like this, we can make that domain safe so you can send information back and forth. Same would go for any email domains. Again, your company email domain, so you can email each other back and forth. Mass storage devices, file shares, printing, almost any other way you can think of in terms of sharing information off of the machine, we're able to then designate that either as safe or unsafe. And if we do label it as safe, even if you have policies set to block this kind of data, it will still let it through. So that's one way to kind of go about to have that standard workflow still going. Also from the Safetica side, from just kind of the technology on the endpoint, it is also still a very light solution. A lot of others, not to name names, have sometimes a bit more resource intensive solutions. There might be some folks remembering some antivirus companies back in the day that were very hungry on resources, and we aim to be as light as we can, of course, with what we do, and are always aiming to use the, let's say, backup or the kind of bit of processes that are kind of at rest. So we never want to be maxing out the machines or anything like this.
Beautiful. I actually do have one more from Luis, if you got some time.
Yeah, sure.
His question is surrounding, will we have information on productivity of users on the new Safetica 1? So I'm assuming he's kind of, what information can we gather regarding insider risk and whatnot from employees?
Exactly. So I can switch back over here real quick and just give you a quick view of how that looks. So first and foremost, we saw the data here. Actually, I'm not sharing my screen. Now I am. Hopefully that's working. Let's just double check. Yeah, perfect. So in the data, this is just any and all data going on, any operations here. But then we do have information regarding the application usage. So we can go through here and we can see, who's been using what applications. We can go by user, by category, or the blocked activities here. And then same goes for websites. We can also look at the website usage of folks. Again, just the standard websites, filtering it per user, web category, or blocked. We can also block access outright to specific websites or applications if one would wish. And also with these two areas in the product, now, not everybody wants to have that sort of insight on the information. There's some regions in the world where you're not allowed to. So that is something that can be toggled on and off.
Beautiful. That should answer that question. I don't think we have any more.
All right, perfect. Well, in that case, folks, if anybody does have any more questions, now is the time, or forever hold your peace. Let's just see if I can, I still just can't see anything on my side. I don't know why, but well, oh well. I don't see anything else coming in. So I guess from my side, of course, thank you all very much for your attendance today. Hopefully it was a, not meaningful, that's the word I'm looking for, useful webinar today. And yeah, hope we see you guys next time. And of course, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Safetica. You can find more information, of course, how to do that on our webpage. And yeah, thank you all for coming and have a great rest of your day.